How's it going, guys? We're back on the world of the first Descendant, and today I want to make a very quick guide on how to prepare yourself for hard mode. I noticed a lot of players were struggling to transition to hard mode, and rather than just telling players to get good or telling players they're just not doing something right, I want to lay down pretty much a guide to give you guys a little bit of direction on how you should be building your Descendant in the event that you're transitioning to the hard mode and you're having a little bit of hard time. One of the comments wanted to clear bosses, be defensive enough, and still be able to do good damage to just do content. I don't want to waste too much more time. Let's dive right on into this guide. Alright, so first things first, you need to get a very sustainable, good, solid weapon, and I'm going to help you out with that first because this is going to be the biggest way to pretty much deal with any boss in the game. Now, keep in mind that I'm going to be trying to focus primarily on people transitioning into hard mode, but if you are struggling with just like Dead Bride or some of the characters before you get to this point, which is probably about level, I think like 35-ish, then you can just skip ahead to the modding section because that's going to help you mostly with like Dead Bride and stuff like that. So first things first, we're going to be going to the Agna Desert. From here, you're going to make your way up here to the teleporter, the Remnant, and we're going to be doing the mission Abandoned Reconstruction Site. And the reason why we're doing this mission is we're looking for a very specific weapon called the Tamer machine gun, and this is a general round weapon with a 100 round mag that is one of the best guns that you can get access to, and it requires almost no time investment to get, and it can be a really good starter weapon for you to pretty much do every bit of the content. Now I say starter weapon, but I literally use this in the in-game, clearing every single boss available, but this is where you're going to be able to get it and where you should be going to get your first starter weapon for hard mode, or even if you're not in hard mode, just somewhere where you should be able to get a good weapon that's going to carry you through the campaign. Keep in mind the Tamer can be dropped on mobs, so make sure you're picking up every bit of loot because they're going to be the ones that's going to give you the Tamer. And one thing to note while farming for your Tamer, that this area can actually drop components, and one component in particular I know that drop here for a fact is defense and max shield component. So while you're in this area, make sure you're picking up everything you see, ideally all the gold stuff, because all the gold stuff has the possibility of dropping, and this is going to be really important for your progression. Just make sure you're picking everything up. But once you have your Tamer, you're going to pretty much move on to the next step, so let's go to that. Now with your Tamer in hand, let's go over the next step, and I'm just going to be using Bunny as an example because I know a lot of players tend to favor, but depending on what character you're going to use, just make sure you adjust for it, but this is just an example. So going to your map, you just press G on the keyboard. I'm not sure what it is on the controller. You're going to press F, and this menu is going to give you access to be able to find pretty much all the reactors available in the game right now. Using Bunny as an example because she scales off of electricity and fusion, electricity and singular, and pretty much those are going to be it. Electricity, infusion, and singular. Her main skill is going to be the lightning emission. We're going to be looking for an electric singular reactor that's going to be general rounds. Unfortunately, in the rotation there is no singular for making this video. For anyone who's looking at this video in the future, we're going to be using fusion since she does scale off of fusion as an example. But for people in the future, make sure you're looking for singular for Bunny because that's going to be more ideal. And we're going to click the Aora Forest, and we're going to go to this zone and look for a reactor specifically for Bunny. The menu basically gives you a indication of where to go in order to find the reactors. Reactors are really good for giving you some extra bonuses. Now the reason why we were specifically targeting general, you get access to a pretty awesome weapon called the Thunder Cage, and this is a general round weapon that's going to be usable for Bunny. And it's a really good starter that can actually scale really well because it has really good benefits. But depending on your favorite weapon type, you're going to change it based on that. Basically, all you need to do in this area is complete missions. And in this area, you're more likely to drop a reactor of that type. You don't need to have a perfect reactor. Look for a purple. You can get a ultimate version if you find one that has good stats. But ultimately, you're just looking for something that's beneficial to your character type. You'll know that it's beneficial towards your character when you have check marks on it, and then you want to look for a stat that may be good, crit, some type of cooldown, some type of damage that's specific to your Descendant. Whatever the case is, you just want to get a good reactor to start with and then move on to the next part. So now you are back at base, you got your reactor, you have your Tamer. Let's go over what we can do to fix this. Now keep in mind I have a lot of Tamers because I play a lot, but we're going to use this example of the new Tamer that I dropped from that mission to give you a bit of direction on what you should be doing. And you're going to press U on your Tamer to make sure you favorite it so you don't salvage this in the future. And we're going to put this in and start using it as for this example and take a look at it. So keep in mind my tamer has 80 slots because I hit it with a energy activator, one of these things here that raise the maximum capacity. I'm going to mod with the intention that you don't actually have one of these. I also hit it with a couple of these as well. This is going to reset the level, but it's going to put slots on this to make your weapon a little bit more effective whenever you slot a specific mod in it and make it cheaper. But again, I'm going to try to avoid those slots so that it could be a little bit more accurate to what you can do whenever you're just transitioning into the game. Now, I have leveled a lot of my mods. I'm going to give you a little bit of direction on how you should be placing your mods and how they should work. So one of the first mods that you should have is Rifling Reinforcement. This is going to give you a ton of damage for your tamer. Generally speaking, this is going to be one of the best mods to start with. You could even max this one out if you want to. I would even kind of recommend you max it out because it's going to give you a ton of damage and it's going to be really easy to do. It's a normal mod. You should have access to it. I'm pretty sure it's a very common drop, so you should be using this one in your tamer. Another really common mod that you can be using here is the fire rate up. I would probably level it up a couple of times, maybe about 4 times. It's going to depend on how much like resource you have, so maybe get about 4 or 5 levels into it and you should be pretty good. Another one is going to be weak point sight. Again, kind of keeping it to what I said earlier. You're going to level it with what you have available, not to overdo it, but enough to get you to the content. And then finally, something that should be fairly obtainable is a enhancement mod. This is going to be a mod that you use for any of the individual bosses that you face off against. You have the ability to see what they're weak against, so make sure you're like swapping it appropriately depending on the boss you're facing. So if you're facing off against someone like Dead Bride and you're struggling, put the fire enhancement in and this should be more than good enough. Obviously your mods are not going to be as high as this, so you'll have more capacity than 53. You'll have maybe a bit more for a few other mods, but this is going to be a generally nice setup to get yourself started. And once you start to get more mods, you can start adding more stuff. You can build towards weak point or you can build towards crit. I have a crit build on my channel right now that you can check out, and then I have a weak point on pretty much any video that's like a build for a specific character. I have a like tamer section in there. You could always go look at that and get a weak point option as well. Once again, this is more of an entry level start just to give you a little bit of direction on what you should be building, but make sure you go check out those videos if you want a complete guide on it. Now looking at over our components, just to give you a bit of an example of what you should be aiming for. This took me about, I don't know, 5 minutes to farm these components, and then maybe like 20 minutes to farm this reactor. But let's go over it quickly. I found a Tinkling Mixture Reactor. It has a Fallen Hope mounting. All this means is if you have that weapon in your hand, you're going to get that benefit, which is going to be extra skill power. You can aim for a purple that has Tingling Mixture on it and then has the substats that you want. But this one has electric skill and it has fusion bonus. These are things that Bunny can get. Obviously you want singular, but you know, it is what it is. This one has skill effect range, something that's decent on Bunny, and then singular skill power boost. This is really good for her V ability. So fresh out of 100, you can easily go get something like this and put it in and be pretty effective. We found a purple auxiliary power that had fire resistance on it, actually rolled legendary, which is really nice. Then we found a defensive support sensor that rolled with shield resistance. Again, we're looking for those resistances so you can stay alive in those fights. We found a defense support memory that has defense and double defense and electric resistance. This is kind of lucky, but you get the point. You can find something like this. And then I got an HP support processor that gives me some max HP and some toxin resistance. And if we press W, we can look at our defenses. We have some good fire, some good chill, some good electric, some good toxin. And this is going to be good for every single bit of the normal mode. When you're transitioning into the hard mode, this is going to be pretty nice, but all you need to do is just swap in a defensive mod that will cover your resistances and you'll be fine. We'll go over that in a second when we talk about our defenses. But yeah, as you can see, you can get yourself set up with a pretty solid weapon as well as some components in like, I don't know, less than an hour and a half, and be prepared to tackle the bosses. But you do need to make sure you mod your Descendant well too, so let's go over that as well. And as you can see, I have a bunny with 50 capacity. This is a level 40 bunny. I haven't hit her with any modules, and she has her base like socket. So let's go over how I would mod this to be prepared for a fight. And the first things first, we're going to be looking for, I believe it falls under Malachite, and we're looking for a weapon or a grappling hook. You probably won't have access to these grappling hooks, but you'll have access to a weapon. And the first thing you need to do is find a fighting style that you enjoy and get it to 10 immediately. You should have more than enough Kuiper shards to pretty much farm this, but if you don't, a place you can easily go to like get this really easy and give yourself a lot of armor and gear, components and stuff like that. You come to the sterile lens here. You're going to come down here to this place called Rockfall. You went here during the campaign. You're going to tackle this mission called the Anticipated ambush point. This is going to give you a ton of gold. This is going to give you a ton of like mods. It's going to give you a ton of resources that you can sell, so you can upgrade anything you want. You can do this very easy with a bunny, for example, or any of the starter descendants, and there's almost always people here just doing this mission. So if you are about to come into hard mode and you've done everything, you maybe a little short on shards or a little short on cash, come here and this will easily get you set up in like 30 minutes if you just keep running the mission with them. Anyway, as I was saying, we're going to go with a weapon. I like kicking a lot, or you can use shock punch, whatever. And this is going to give you 10 additional mod capacity, which is going to make it easier for you to slot in some mods. Now, what are some mods that you should be looking for? I typically try to like cover these mods, but one mod that's super important to me is HP. This is going to be a really good module. It's going to take up a lot of capacity, but you have 60 slots, so it's okay, and these are going to be reduced. So this is going to be a big one. I would like max this one. This one is in every single build that I use because it is super important, and it's something you're gonna want to use no matter what. Another great mod that you could in theory use is defense. This is going to keep you alive. This is a lot of slots, I know, but these two are very important. You're not going to fill out all these slots unless you like use a lot of your crystallization catalysts. Don't feel like you're doing something wrong because you don't have all these maxed out. It's just the nature of the game. It does encourage you to like try to pretty much like use your crystallization catalyst to min-max, and then having some form of antibody or whatever boss. Let's say we're going in and we're facing off against a electric boss and you have this slotted in. This actually works really well for bunning because you have an X slot that reduces the cost. You press save, and these are all you need to be defensive, and then you can do whatever you want with the extra 20 slots and kind of build off of it. And let's take a look at our stats. Let's say you're going to face off against the Executioner. Press W and you have 7,300 resistance. This is good enough right here. This is good enough resistance to face off against the hard mode Executioner easily. As you can see, he requires 7,000 electric resistance. You easily cover that with 7,300. So this is a great way to be able to deal with any of the bosses that are really tough, because all you need to do at this point is simply slot in a resistance mod and max out antibody, and you're covered for all your defense. If you have the HP and you have the defense node, you're completely covered and you're not going to go down as much, and you'll be able to finish fights much more often than you would if you don't have these. Anyway, that is my starter guide for players who are transitioning from the campaign into hard mode. This should help you out on transitioning into hard mode without having too much struggle. I know how hard it is to face off against some of the bosses, not really know what you're doing. It's not always so easy to just figure this stuff out, so hopefully, again, this helped you out. If it did, consider once again leave me that like because that helps me out quite a bit. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video very soon.